Yes, we can see your presentation.
All right. Well, we're getting a few more people, so we will wait just one more second. I apologize with the number that are jumping on here right now. Okay, that seems to have calmed down a little. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Again, if you don't know me, I'm Josh Garrison. I'm the Associate Commissioner for Public Policy here at the Commission for Higher Education. And appreciate you all taking the opportunity to join us for this webinar today. I'm going to jump right into it. At any point in time, if you want to stop me for questions, feel free. As always, hope this is as interactive as possible. Ask questions throughout. So thank you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If this will work, let's try. You know, only 3 years into the pandemic, you'd figured I would know how to use Teams by now. So with that, just a quick overview of the presentation that we're going to cover today. Want to give everyone an update on the initiatives that the Commission for Higher Education is right now pursuing. A lot of them will only deal with financial aid on a tangential basis. It won't touch directly on the work that you're doing. And if we can make sure we all mute our microphones, that would be great. On a daily basis, but it will impact you either by additional yield or additional work for students coming in. I want to recap the legislative session. As many of you are aware, there were numerous changes to financial aid programs throughout the session. Updates will be provided on all those today. Additionally, there's one bill separately that I want to cover, which is HEA 1002. And this is one of the biggest bills, at least in the education space, since 1348. Thankfully, most of the impact is at the K-12 level, not the financial aid or higher ed level, but there are aspects that will impact the work that we are doing together. Then we'll cover any questions for the upcoming financial aid or award year, and then we'll do just general Q&A on that. So with that, if there are no questions before I get started, I'll just jump right in. All right. Again, at any point, stop me and ask anything. Feel free to come off mute. So, all right, initiative update. One of the things that we want to talk or highlight here has to do with our college going rate. Now, our college readiness report will be released probably within the next month. And one of the things that we're thankful for, although there was a decline, it is the smallest decline that we have seen in the last 5 to 6 years. We are anticipating for next year to see actual increase in enrollment, as we've seen increases at our 2-year institutions, as well as a leveling off of declines at our 4-year campuses. Each campus will be different, but we do expect for the class of 2022 for there to be an increase, and then for the class of 2023 to be another increase. And hopefully by 2024, we'll be at or close to pre-pandemic levels, at least in terms of the percentage, if not the overall population pursuing post-secondary education. Our college going rate for the class of 2021 held steady at 53%. We were seeing, prior to the start of the school year, the academic year, increases in the number of students filing for financial aid, the number of students who had applied. Unfortunately, if you remember back those 2 years ago, a new variant of COVID came out or was on the rise over the course of the summer, and I think that slowed down some of the enrollments. Thankfully, we're seeing that scholars are still going at a high rate, and we are focusing and we're hyper-focused on the college going rate of our Black, Latino, and male students, as those continue to lag significantly behind the rest of our population. So you'll be hearing quite a bit about this in the coming month when we release our report and recommendations. One of the areas that you may see quite a bit coming up, and this may impact items such as transfer of credit that you may deal with, and then some of the dual credit AP, IB, and Cambridge credits that you're seeing, is the expansion of the Indiana College Core. If you're not aware, the College Core is a block of 30 credits that transfers to all public institutions and most of the private institutions. If you look on the little chart that we have, In 21-22, we were at 84 schools. This last year, 141. We know that we're going to be at least 240 schools this next year, meaning that students at 240 high schools will have the opportunity to earn the College Core through a variety of credit options. All of our public campuses right now, except for Purdue West Lafayette, will be conferring the College Core. And we are looking forward to working with our university partners to expand access to this. Finally, schools, due to a change in the budget that I'll cover later, schools, meaning high schools, can now earn up to $1,500 per their student who completes the College Core. So it is an incentive for our high schools to work with our colleges and universities to provide access to this, as well as additional funding for either dual enrollment courses or additional qualified instructors. We will also be launching the My College Core app for students to, or My College Core website for students to find a way to earn the credits necessary to get that block of 30 credits. So you'll likely see an increase in the number of students with dual credit, and hopefully no longer just what we were seeing, which were the random acts of dual credit, and not something that's transferable either as a block or into a pathway. Crossing the Finish Line is an initiative that started during the pandemic. What the program does is it allows students who are close to earning either a degree or credential to take additional courses over the course of the summer. It's been a fairly successful program and saved nearly $1.5 million in costs for students with over 700 awards the first year. The second year, we saw $2.5 million, and we're hoping to see even more save for our families this next year, as well as an increased number of completions because we doubled from year 1 to year 2. We are looking for in year 3, it's the final year of our Gear 2 funding. However, the General Assembly did allocate $2.5 million, which may be used for crossing the finish line and for these courses to complete a degree or credential over the course of the summer. So those are 2 of the more broad initiatives. The next one, I imagine we might get some questions about, and hopefully you've heard about the next initiative. So before I go on, any questions? All right. Starting this fall, the Commission for Higher Education will be launching the Your Path to College. It's our pre-admissions initiative. What this is, in other states typically refer to this as a direct admissions program. We're not calling it direct admissions because students aren't admitted directly to a program. They have to take additional steps. But launching with the class of 2024, students will be able to will be getting a letter from the commission saying which institutions they are eligible to attend. They would still have to complete things like the application, and it'll have caveats on there around items such as earning a honors diploma or not being admitted directly, let's say into nursing or architecture, or engineering. They'll still have to meet additional. But what this does is it provides a opening for a student to apply and knowing that they are going to be admitted to some program at the institution. The focus of this the population we're really focused on with this, even though it will be going to everybody, are those students that we've lost over the last 5 to 6 years. So when we were at 65% college going rate, we know that we've lost around 12% of students. We know that this equates to roughly 5,000 to 6,000 students a year that we're missing out on. Right now, nearly 77% of nearly 78% of our colleges and universities are participating with 38 of the 48 eligible campuses. So some of the regionals will not for one reason or the other, and some of the main campuses are not participating. For this first year, it is an opt-in for the high schools to participate because we right now do not have GPAs directly from the Department of Education. Next year, this will no longer be an opt-in, and every high school student across the state will have access to this program. But as of last week, we had 307 schools, and I know we're above 315 already. We are mailing 2 rounds of letters, both to parents/guardians and the students. One in August, letting them know that this opportunity is coming up, and that to be on the lookout for the letter. And essentially, this is a real opportunity. And then in September, the actual letters will be mailed out to the students. And we'll be launching a one-stop landing page where students can click on to either go to the Common App and apply, or apply directly to a college that they've been pre-admitted to or interested in into this. What's great about the pre-admissions letter, or what we're doing here, is that every student who gets a letter will see at least 2 campuses, because we have right now 2 open admissions. As long as a student has a 2.0 GPA, they're going to see 11 campuses on their letter. And for students who are at that 2.0 to 2.5, we feel that is a huge option or opportunity for those students to know that they are wanted on our campuses. 31 of the campuses have what we call GPA only criteria, meaning a student can be admitted just by GPA without the SAT score. Again, as I mentioned, we will have 100% participation, as close to 100% as we can get with the data by 2025, and we anticipate 31 institutions for that class as well. This is we mirrored the program after what's going on in Idaho, which saw an 8 percentage point increase in college going rate after their first year. Additionally, they saw greater in-state retention, and the populations, at least their research have found, that have been helped the most have been the low-income and minority students. So we're excited about this opportunity. You'll see a media campaign pushed out around August and September. And then on the other side of the letter, so one side will have this information. On the other side, if we ever get any information, we'll talk about filing the FAFSA for 24-25. We might, depending on how FSA rolls out their campaign, and we may have a focus, at least at that point in time, on creating an FSA ID, but we'll see how that goes, and what many of our peers are learning right now at the NCAN event in DC. So before I jump into legislative recap, any questions so far about this initiative or any of the initiatives I mentioned? All right. Moving on. As I said, we had an active legislative session. Just to give you an idea of what it was for the commission this year, normally we have right around 10 or 11 total either actions, programs, or modifications to our programs each year. So we expect tweaks around the edges. This year, we have 25 individual either new programs or modifications to programs, from anywhere from financial aid to our involvement to K-12 to a couple other things that I'll mention. So this has undoubtedly been the busiest summer that I have had working for the Commission for Higher Ed. We adjourned Friday morning at around 3 in the morning on April 28th. And 252 of the bills filed went to Governor Holcomb for signature. As I mentioned, we have 25 different items we have to take care of with varying timeframes across 10 bills that directly mentioned our work. One of the good things that we'll see, and I'll talk about the programs individually as we move on, is now our budget is over $400 million in financial aid each year. We've saw an increase in expansion opportunities, and across the board and across the aisle, we saw support for state financial aid with the General Assembly. We were very pleased to see numerous individuals support the 21st Century Scholars Auto Enrollment, which I'll talk about. Many were excited about the Frank O'Bannon grant. I had no clue they actually knew what the Frank O'Bannon grant was, so it was great to see that they understood. At least that was an opportunity for students, as well as the support and expansion of our educator scholarships and our veteran scholarships. We are and hope to remain first in the Midwest and fifth in the nation in need-based financial aid, and then we hope to improve that fifth in the nation after we see the O'Bannon increases this year. So I'm going to jump into the bills that impact the work that we do and cover what we're doing and where we're at in terms of development and implementation of these. So right now, SEA, Senate Enrolled Act 167, is the FAFSA requirement. And it, quote unquote, requires FAFSA completion for high school seniors, starting with this next year's graduating class. They can also opt out. Parents can now opt an individual out. An emancipated student can opt themselves out, as well as guardians and a student who reached the age of majority, so an 18-year-old can do this as well. A high school now, and this is what got the bill across the finish line versus this is like the 5th year we've worked on this bill in the General Assembly, that a high school will be able to waive students broadly after April 15th. So people will be able to go in, or counselors will be able to go in after April 15th. If we can make sure we're muted, that'd be great. After April 15th, and mass waive students on who do not file the FAFSA. So this will be a tool for us to see which schools do actually improve and which schools do not improve in terms of filing. We know the states, we're the 7th state to have this requirement. Of the 6 states who did this previously, all of them jumped into the top 10 in FAFSA filing the next year. We don't know what this year's FAFSA cycle will look like, but we historically have ranked anywhere from 30th to even as low as, I do believe we got down to 39th or 40th one year, hovering right around 50% of our students filing by June 30th. So we hope to see an increase with a goal of at least 60% of students filing the FAFSA this year. That's actually filing and not choosing to opt out. The commission is providing an opt-out form mirrored after the one that we've seen in Illinois. We will not be providing that opt-out form until the fall semester for a couple reasons. One, we want to make sure that the FAFSA is ready to go and available in December. Second reason is we've had numerous high school counselors reach out to us and say that they were going to include the opt-out form in their enrollment packet and have parents fill it out day one, so they could just opt out all their students from the moment we started this. So no, that's not going to happen. So we'll provide that form out here later this semester. So we know that this will be increased work, especially for our partners and InvestEd and our other community partners who help with the FAFSA. But we hope to see significant increases in access of aid. Before I move on, any questions about the FAFSA requirement? Seeing none. This one doesn't impact financial aid as much, but it does impact our institutions, and there likely will be financial aid questions around this. So the Purple Star designation is designed after a program in Ohio that acknowledges campuses that are providing supports for military families and military connected families and the veterans themselves. We have a veterans task force here who are currently working on the requirements for receiving this designation, which we hope to have out this fall. The task force itself is not made up of, it's predominantly external individuals, so individuals from our campuses, veterans groups, and IDVA, the Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs. You may be asked questions about who handles veterans financial aid and how that is handled on campus. And I will talk about National Guard Supplemental Grant here in a second, the expansion, as well as everybody's favorite Go Army or Army Ignited. So any questions about the Purple Star designation?
I've got a question, Josh. How will schools be notified of the criteria and how to respond to it?
Yep. So once we have all the criteria locked in place, we'll do the normal media announcement, but we will be reaching out to your government relations folks. So stand for you, that's going to be Tony, as well as we'll send something out to any of our veteran contacts on campus on what needs to be met to receive the designation on that. So keep an eye out. Happy to send something to you directly as well once the criteria is established. And if there is a very specific financial aid aspect to it, we will be sending that out so you know.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm sure Tony will send something, so you don't need to send it directly to me.
All right, sounds good. All right. Any other? Okay. So access to transcripts. So this bill requires our public and proprietary institutions. This does not apply to our private nonprofit. So if you're an ICI affiliated institution, this does not require or does not apply to you. But if a student owes $1,000 or less and has paid at least $100 in the past year, or if a student owes more than $1,000 and has paid the lesser of 10% of the debt or $300 in the past year, these institutions must release the transcript to the student for whatever purposes. So it doesn't impact most of you, but I know that some will receive questions about this or questions about outstanding debts. So want to make sure you were aware of that. Any questions about the access to transcript? All right. I'm going to run briefly through the budget and some of the items in the budget, which is HEA 1001, 1001, specifically some of the new grants on those. Martin University received $5 million over the course of the commission for growing programs in high demand, high need professions, and will be before the state budget committee to present the plan for that. The reason I mention that is it ties into another item that's going before the state budget committee that will impact your campuses. And that's a $5 million college success program, $2.5 million each year of the biennium. And the funds are to be used for increasing the success of first generation minority and low income students. And for those, it only applies to our 4-year institutions, not to our 2-year institutions. We will be going with our plan in early August for approval. And the way that it's going to work is we're going to actually allocate funds to institutions who apply to have additional supports for these students with also a focus on 21st century scholars. So some of our campuses and some of you may have worked with our previous Scholar Corps. This would be a fully funded, fully paid position for your campuses to provide those supports. There are varying levels of supports for 21st century scholars and other populations, and we want to make sure that every campus has access and every student has access to someone who can support them. Fortunately, as I mentioned, our 2-year institutions were not included in that. We're still looking for a outside solution to that one. We will send this out across, again, the normal channels, but we will also be sending this one out to your across the financial aid listserv as well. That way you can help your campus and encourage your campus to apply for one of the roughly 30 positions that will be available. Any questions on that one? All right. Another item that we were pleased to see in the budget are academic performance grants for our K-12 schools. As a result of a student completing either dual credit, the College Core, or associate degree at the high school level before graduating high school, our high schools can earn funding on the back end for that. So for each dual credit hour, it's $40. For the College Core, it's $1,500, and for the associate's degree, it's $2,500. Each student is capped at a max of earning $2,500 for their school. Again, we think this will be a great funding opportunity for more schools to offer these dual credits to students and pathways, which will lead to hopefully post-secondary enrollment. All right, now to my favorite bill of the session, 1449, 21st Century Scholars. It required us to identify and enroll all eligible 21st century scholars into the program. We're also required to provide an opt-out provision for families to take advantage of. And it began with the last year's 8th graders, so the students will be freshmen for 23-24. There are no changes in the requirements in terms of meeting the GPA, meeting the Scholar Success Program, no changes in the requirement of credit completion, no income eligibility requirements. The only difference that changes is that we at the commission had the data to automatically enroll these students, and this allows us to do that. We already know who's on free and reduced lunch. We already have ways to verify that at multiple different levels. So this allowed us to enroll all of them. So bill was signed in May by Governor Holcomb. And earlier this month, we enrolled more than 40,000 students in the program for the class of 2027. So these students are now showing, well, they will show on their high school once we get the new DOE file saying which high school they all went to as approved pending pledge. So they still have to sign their pledge, and we'll be able to see how many students uptake the scholarship. This is going to be a great opportunity for us to reach out to them earlier on and talk about opportunities like what I mentioned earlier, the pre-admissions program, saying, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, you're likely to get admitted to this many programs. And then talking about more post-secondary opportunities, pathways that we can provide either through dual credit or the College Core. We feel that this, combined with the pre-admissions initiatives, is extremely important for us to turn around our college going rate, not just from the health of your institutions, to making sure that you have a population that can enroll, but from an individual standpoint, because every data point shows that the greater education that you have, the more likely that you're going to have a greater income, less debt, and other positive benefits. By the end of August, we will have enrolled more than 120,000 students in the program between the class of 2027, 2028, and 2029. It's going to actually be close to 138,000 students that will be enrolling in the program over the course of those three academic years. We cannot enroll 28 and 29 right now for a couple reasons. We need to update the Scholar Track on one thing, but we also need the Department of Education to provide us their most recent student file so we can approve them in our system. Any questions about 21st Century Scholars auto enrollment? Okay. Like I said, you'll see the first class of this 27-28 with the full fiscal costs coming in fiscal year 2031. Military-based financial aid. So if you're following this, if you're an ICI institution, you were likely following this through the session. This was one of the bills that changed the most. So what's kind of funny is that the original bill had nothing to do with what this ended up doing. It was something completely different around educational cost exemptions, and it completely changed from the start of the session to the end of session, and essentially just amended a different bill into this one. So, but what it does is it expands the NGSG and CBO and all the educational cost exemptions to private nonprofit colleges. It caps the amount of the award at $5,000 per student attending a private institution. That was not an amount that we set. That was an amount that was negotiated to keep the bill moving, because they wanted a cap on how much that could happen, because, as you know, some of our private institutions are $30,000 plus for tuition and fees. The educational cost exemptions were limited to the class of 2023 or later. Reason for that being is that we have been running right up to the budget for our CBO fund, and what this would allow, or what the concern was, is that we would go over our cost for CBO and by this expansion. We do not anticipate that being the case this year. And we do have other sources of funds if we have to move money around, so our public institutions do not have to bear the cost at the expense of a private institution gaining access to the program. We are still working on the update within Scholar Track at this point in time. Caitlin, not to put you on the spot, I don't know if you don't feel like you need to answer, but if you know what sprint we're going to be able to get to this in, but we're looking at end of August, early September, having this in the system for our private institutions. We understand the delay. It's just with the number of new programs and items, it just wasn't going to be able to get done any quicker than that. If you have a student who is they feel qualifies for this benefit and they're at a private institution, we're happy to work with you through College FA or myself directly as we work through to get this into the system. Any questions with that? All right, I thought that would get the most questions, so I was wrong. All right, we have two next generation Hoosier Educator Scholarship bills I want to mention. There's a new Transition to Teach program For next gen. It allocated $1 million with a one-time award of up to $10,000. So we're going to be awarding roughly 100 students this first year. Unfortunately, there are over 3,000 students who would qualify for this program. We are working directly with the Transition to Teach programs, and we're keeping this outside of Scholar Track for the time being, not having it ran through traditional financial aid pathways and on those. A lot of these are dealt with directly with the program or through the bursar's office and do not qualify for financial aid. If your institution is one that is offering a Transition to Teach program and you do handle the financial aspect of that in some way, let's not talk about it now, but feel free to reach out to me afterwards and we can talk about how to loop you in. We're going to open the application up in September for these students. It'll be a first come, first served basis. And because of the extreme demand for this and individuals who's wanting to partake in the Transition to Teach funding will need to have had a school that they're working with directly. That was the original intent of the author. So we're going to use that as a limiting factor. So not just somebody coming off the street wanting to do Transition to Teach, but somebody who is already tied to a school that they plan on either working at or partnering with once they have completed the program. And for those of you who I said Transition to Teach without explaining, if you don't know what that is, a Transition to Teach program is a program where a student already has a bachelor's degree, and it's typically a one-year accelerated program to license them in education to teach. Any questions about Transition to Teach Next Gen? All right. All right. The expansion of the Next Generation Hoosier Educator Scholarship. In the budget, historically, we received $6 million for Next Gen. This time around, we received $12 million for Next Gen, $1 million of that having to go to the Transition to Teach. So we have Transition to Teach. So this year we have $11 million for what I've just called traditional Next Generation Hoosier Educator Scholarship. They've increased the amount from 7,500 to 10,000, and that should be reflected in Scholar Track. We turned on Next Gen last Friday. So those of you that have been pulling info files over the weekend would likely have the students who are in the system for that. We awarded nearly 400 students for the 400 additional students for the 23-24 academic year. We could have awarded significantly more. The problem with that is it compounds because we have additional years. So we have a plan to spend that down with roughly 350 students being added each year. Sometimes we can get up to 400 depending on persistence rates. In addition to that, it creates a parallel program called the Next Generation Hoosier Minority Educator Scholarship. It will follow the exact same requirements in the Next Generation Hoosier Educator Scholarship, but it follows, it is available to Black and Hispanic students only. Finally, there were increases in the amount of budgeted for and in the amount awarded to students participating in the Earlene Rogers Teaching Scholarship for minority students. With that, I want to take a second to mention the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action, and just to say that the opinion was silent on the impact on financial aid, and until we are told by a court to do otherwise, we will operate these programs as they have always been operated. We will not be changing the Crawford Scholarship. We will implement these as they always have been. So unfortunately, I think we all know that the next area that we will see a round of lawsuits will be dealing with financial aid programs, but we will not be changing our actions this year. Any questions about the new programs here? All right. Moving on, HEA 1002. As I mentioned, this is one of the most significant bills to pass through the General Assembly in the education span in my 10 years at the Commission. Probably the biggest, at least in terms of implementation since the credit completion legislation. So just want to give a quick overview of what that is, and I'm going to zoom through some of these because some do not have as much impact for you all, but I thought it would be good for you to be aware of. One, the Commission for Higher Education is taking over the administration of career and technical education. So we will be administering the Carl Perkins funds, as well as working with the CTE districts, Ivy Tech, and BU on awarding those grants. We received a team of 9 individuals who were at the governor's workforce cabinet, and they came over. They transitioned over on July 1st, and we'll have them in the office sometime in September. So the commission now oversees career and technical education here in the state of Indiana through our CTE teams. Goal of this being, and if you've worked with our CTE providers on the next level programs of study, all of them now include some sort of dual credit or some sort of credential that will be transferring on to post-secondary education. So we're excited about to help create more intentional pathways for our students through our work with CTE, and we got a great team who joined the commission. Also, they've been to 3 or 4 agencies in the last 7 years, so hopefully we find them a permanent home here in this office. The item that probably had the most media attention this session were the career scholarship accounts. With this, there's not a whole lot that will impact your work this first year. There was only $5 million allocated this year and $10 million allocated the second year. And what it does, it provides $5,000 to a student. Think your College Choice 529 type funding, but $5,000 to a student to cover the cost of training that is not traditional high school training or is done off-site or done in a different way. So think of modern youth apprenticeships if you're involved with that, or CTE programs that are based in an employer rather than the school itself or at a CTE center. We'll only be able to provide, due to the allocation, roughly 1,000 scholarships, or roughly 0.4% of the eligible population will be able to access these programs. It is a joint partnership with the Department of Education, who approves what programs are eligible for these, the commission, who approves which providers are eligible to receive the funds, the treasurer's office approves how the funds may be used, and then eventually the program will be aligned with a K-12 or a high school student's graduation plan by 2025. Just wanted to mention those because they did receive quite a bit of attention over the course of this year. This next one, I'm sure there will be significant questions. So anything on CSAs before I move on to the 30-minute meetings? All right. So if you were at the winter conference for ISFAA, I spoke about the possibility that there were going to be these 30-minute meetings that would be required of both high school juniors and seniors, individuals exiting the Department of Corrections, and 21st and O'Bannon recipients who were in their first and third years of receiving the scholarship. That program or that requirement was removed up until the last day of session, and it was added back in the conference committee report. So it requires the commission, so it requires us to create a list of approved colleges and universities, intermediaries, which I'll discuss in a second, employers and labor organizations who can conduct these meetings with these populations. Fortunately, at least through our reading and what will be our guidance, that no student will have their scholarship held if they do not complete these meetings. No senior or junior will be prevented from graduating if they do not have them. But it's important that we implement this with fidelity and have the option for students to have someone in their area, at least at the 21st and O'Bannon, that aligns with their future career aspirations. With that, we will be using this as a catalyst to restart the college SSP discussions, with the 30-minute meetings being a cornerstone of that, because they are required. Somebody muted me. I get it. You don't like it on that. So, with the 30-minute meetings, we are going to be working to get a widget built in ScholarTrack for students to log their 30-minute meetings. The requirement will be it's a student requirement, but we will also be telling anybody who's approved to conduct these that they need to take the last 5 minutes to help to provide the individual time to report it in the system. Looking for late fall, early spring launch of this program with guidance, and then items built within Scholar Track for both the juniors and the seniors. The Department of Corrections will be a little bit different as they have the higher program over there, and students will, offenders who are leaving the Department of Corrections will likely be routed through the higher program rather than this. Any questions around the 30-minute meeting requirement? Okay. Capacity building grants. We were also given at the commission $5 million to increase the capacity of what have been called intermediaries, and those are individuals who connect students with employment opportunities. There are 3 different versions of intermediaries within the bill. The ones involved with the CSAs, those will be the individuals coordinating things like modern youth apprenticeships. 30-minute meetings, intermediaries would be some sort of career advising organization that may meet with the individual to talk about their options. And then for a career coaching grant, they can receive funding, an intermediary can, once that plan is developed, and I'll talk about that in a second. It requires us to provide no more than $250,000 to these groups, and we will have a statewide reach to this. We will not just be a Central Indiana program. We'll follow either the economic growth regions or our regions. That funding to be announced in October. In addition to the rest of this, we're required to create a comprehensive career coaching and navigation system. This requirement was approved at the GWC. There was a plan that was created, but it wasn't fully implemented. Additionally, the commission will be awarding career coaching grants to the tune of, I believe, $15 million at the K-12 level. Couple other quick things before we jump into some of the more financial aid focused items. We have a career awareness curriculum. The commission, in partnership with the Department of Education, will need to be developing a career awareness course. There is one right now, but it'll be modified, and we develop the standards on that. And the course must be taught by all of our schools in the 9th grade by 2030. And yes, we are already planning out to 2030. 1002 also requires the Department of Education, or the State Board of Education, my apologies, to establish new high school diploma requirements with recommendations to be done by December 31st, 2024. We will be involved in this process as this will impact college admissions. Even though we're not listed directly, we'll be in the room and I'll make sure of that. 2 more items, I believe. We have the graduation outcomes report. We have to work with the Department of Education and the Management Performance Hub to look at various data points as students progress through their careers. This would be extremely important that we provide feedback because we want to make sure that we look at not just 1, 2, 3 years out when students are in college, but we're looking further out so we can show the actual benefit of a post-secondary education. Industry collaboration grants. Again, we're working with the Department of Education to issue a grant that will allow educators to work directly with employers in their areas to learn more hands-on items in their area of expertise. So if you have a physics teacher who wants to go work with an organization, they can work with them. Or if a chemistry teacher wants to work with Lily, we would build a connection there. Budget's only $1 million for this one. And this catalyst, if you remember a few years ago, there was, just to be blunt, some hysteria about teachers were going to be required to do apprenticeships. It's not what the law said at all. But this is building off of what that law was trying to do, which was provide more options for teacher staff professional development. So with that, there were a lot of legislative updates, a lot of changes there. Any questions before I jump into briefly discussing the 23-24 academic year?
Josh, this is Stan again. What would college and university commitments or requirements be for those 30-minute meetings? I didn't really see that there'd be a lot initially.
No, there's no real requirements for you all in terms of having to do anything related to that. So we're not tying award creation to it. We'll be tracking that. We would hope that you would help push out the opportunities once those are announced to the financial aid recipients in partnership with us. But at least at this time, there's not. Now, for our college and university admissions teams, at the high school level, all juniors and seniors have to have these meetings. So juniors and seniors, there are over 150,000 between the two grades across the state. It does allow for our colleges and universities to meet with juniors and seniors. And just to be blunt, this is a heck of a recruitment option. I think the original intent of the bill was to have it and meet with employers and learn about opportunities. But if you follow the discussion around the ASVAB at the high school level, this is kind of like that loophole where our colleges and universities can really have an opportunity to talk with a lot of students they may not have had the opportunity to talk to because of this, and get them in front of these students their junior year talking about application processes. So would encourage the admissions offices, and we'll be highlighting that once we have all of the groups approved, because this, at least at the high school level, will be a very good recruitment tool.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about the legislative updates? Okay, we're zooming right through. So for 23-24, I just have some bullet points I want to go over, and then talk through each of these, and then open up for any questions that you have. And we're going to finish early, as it seems like we do each time. So 24-25 FAFSA update / O'Bannon update. So start with O'Bannon. The new O'Bannon amounts are on the information file. You should be seeing those awards and creating those. We were waiting to extend the FAFSA deadline for 23-24 to a later date once we see initial utilization. I'm going to ask you all, if you possibly can, to claim as early as possible so we can get the funding out and move the dates for those students. It's important that we understand what the spend is going to look like this year as we increase this amount. Now, obviously, it's going to change with the new SAI and that changing for the next year. But for this year, we want to help as many students as possible. So please, like I said, claim as early as you're able to claim on that one. We are anticipating, to give you an idea, of spending about $20 million over the appropriation. We have been in the last few years, $25 to $30 million under the appropriation. So we anticipate awarding nearly $50 million more in financial aid this year. So we're really excited about that. We just want to make sure that it gets to as many students as possible. And we have a 6-year spend down plan for spending down the rollover. I don't know why, but if you watched the commission meeting last week, you'd have heard that we have over $100 million in reserves for O'Bannon that have gone unspent. Now, can't spend all that tomorrow because there's no funding to back it up once it's gone, but we have a spend down plan for that that we hope will help students over the next 6 years. With that, we have been in active conversations about FAFSA changes. I really don't like to call it simplification because it doesn't seem like it's that simple. The FAFSA update for 24-25. We have staff right now at NCAN, and the commission is part of a group between our association, NASGAP, SHIO, and SHIO to work and provide input on the changes that are coming forward. Our biggest concern right now are the technical updates, because we just don't have those. And we had a meeting with Melanie Story and others earlier this week around updates, and nothing that I can really share coming out of that one. We will work as quickly as possible once we have all the finalized technical specs to get things rolling for the next year. And we just kind of at a standstill on what that will look like. We will also have to create, and by create I mean announce, the 24-25 O'Bannon amounts later. That the schedule awards will be later than normal, just because we need to look at what the population is going to look like for that group. A couple things on that one. I know the Pell schedule issue is front of mind for many of you. We will be putting out a schedule of awards or a grid like we've always done. It'll just have different numbers on that one. Additionally, our fall outreach will likely be around creation of FSA IDs. We did get confirmation that the FSA ID will not change and that they're not going to have to create a new one in December once the FAFSA opens, on December 31st at 11:59 and 59 seconds. So we're working through this as quickly as possible. The other thing is, if you're watching the most recent webinar, it sounds like we're going to have to report that as a state, we require additional eligibility determination requirements because we have scholarships that are military-based, education-based, race-based scholarships. So we're going to get put on the naughty list for asking additional questions based on that. So any 24-25 FAFSA update questions or abandon questions for me? Nope. All right. For our public institutions, we know that the CBO calculation was running slow. Just to make me look dumb, ScholarTrack decided that it would speed up. So I think that issue has been resolved. We didn't even get a chance to have our developers look at it yet. So if you want to double check, you can pull a CBO file, info file, and you'll see. I know that we looked at one today, and it was small, like very few last week, to this last night's file having more than they had in the prior year. So we're hoping that issue has been resolved. As we go through this, make sure you're reaching out to College FA to let us know about any issues with ScholarTrack either acting the way that it shouldn't or that it's running slowly on that. Removing users. One of the things that we historically do is we'll go in and one of the team members will remove users who have not been active for a year. I'm going to ask that you all please remove users as they leave your institutions. If you don't know how to do that, reach out to us. We'll go ahead and do that. It's important that they become inactive as soon as you remove them from your system. Please remove them from ours as well. I do believe that's a requirement of the PPA. So please make sure those individuals are being inactivated in the system. Financial aid manual. I really am Lucy with the football on this one, so I do apologize. But Angel, I'm going to put you on the spot. What is our anticipated online release of that one?
Yeah, that's no problem at all. So email notifications will be going out by the end of the month when you all can access the updated manual at the end of the legislative session. We're just having some conversations about if there are certain things that we should or shouldn't add. And so once we kind of came to that conclusion and then finished all of the edits, we're at a really good spot with wanting to publish it now. So once we get it all, so it's a massive document, as you guys know, but once we get it all pretty and downloaded, we'll upload it to the website and I'll notify everyone when you can access it.
All right. And then with that, we wanted to leave time for questions for what you're seeing for 23-24, any questions you have for 24-25. Otherwise, we can give you a half an hour of your time back. All right. Well, if you do have any questions, feel free to email College FA. We'll respond to you. We appreciate your partnership through this. We're going to have a busy year in financial aid, and we look. Oh, will the next be general Beth Fisher? Those are listed right now. We activated. We turned those on in the system on Friday evening, so you should see them available. If they're not for your institution, please let us know. We'll look into see what's going on, but they should be visible. Now, some of the new students may not have signed their promissory note yet. We're still tracking those individuals down, but the majority will be.
We're just as stoked as you are, Sarah.
Yep. And we're just as excited for after the 2024 legislative session for it to be out of date again, right, Angel? So
Exactly. Yeah.
I
So-
thought for sure you were going to say, now Sarah won't bug me about it every time we talk to her.
I have a feeling that this will be one that is constantly needing updated, especially after the new FAFSA comes out and there might be some changes. So with that, give a moment for any other questions, but feel free to jump off. I'll stay on for a few minutes if you want to stick around for a smaller group question. Otherwise, again, appreciate the partnership on all this. We look forward to working with you this year and having hopefully a successful year with increased enrollment. So again, thanks. Angel, if you want to kill the recording.